Hello, everybody. Welcome to Revelation Now podcast. It's good to be back with you. I know Jason and Tyler did a great job last week as we continue talking about the last days, but in connection with not just the book of Revelation. We have talked that, but also just this increase in knowledge. And Daniel talks about how in the last days there will be an increase in knowledge. And it was supposed to take us away from supernatural beliefs. But what I've noticed, and many have noticed, it's actually done the opposite. Instead of going away from beliefs in the paranormal, beliefs in God, spirits, it's more so. And trying to figure what we were supposed to all become atheists because we've got it all figured out now, Yeah. Therefore we don't need all these beliefs in gods and these other things, but it's just not happened. It's almost like part of me, when we were studying the book of Revelation here at the church, what was cool, I use the word cool for me, was seeing that in some ways with our technology, we're catching up to what the Bible was already talking about thousands of years ago. Like what we're going to talk about today. This deal of out-of-body experiences.
What a revelation is, it's an unveiling, a revealing.
Yeah. I noticed when it talked about the rapture, when it talked about the word caught up, which we're going to talk about today, caught up. U-P. It's only found, how many times is it found there?
Let's see here.
3 times, right? 3 or 4 times.
In
the Greek word.
3 times in that context,
Harpazo.
of a person.
Here's how you say it officially. There's a twirling of the R's in Greek, and I can't do it, but here it is.
Strong's G 726. Harpazo.
Harpazo.
That is to be seized by a force.
Yeah.
That's what it means. You're seized by a force. That's why I was saying the Bible was ahead of its time. That's long before Star Trek technology. Beam me up, Scotty. And I realized the Bible's not using terminology. It's not using magical phrases. Like they slowly floated up into the air. But even with Jesus, if you'll notice in Acts, it says he was caught up. He was taken up. It's not necessarily just flew like Superman. There's forces involved. And we've been reading through the Bible here, and we just came across these phrases, specifically the phrase caught up and then the phrase third heaven. Tell us about that. Where's that from?
What from?
Caught up, third heaven.
Caught up, third heaven? Oh.
Where's that found in the scriptures?
Well,
you have it there, right? We just read it.
Well, what I saw just last night, we're reading here at our church at Life Point. We're doing 1 chapter a day, Monday through Friday, and I'm just 2 days behind. So yesterday I was on 2 Corinthians 12, and I saw Paul talking about this experience he had where he was caught up. That's that word you just said. Harpazo. He was caught up to what he called
seized by a force.
Third heaven. Seized, yes, and it's to grab or seize suddenly so as to remove or gain control, snatch, take away, and then it also says in such a way that no resistance is offered. Just completely snatched and taken away.
Yeah, and but taken somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, like you're translated to another place. And so in 2 Corinthians 12, Paul talks about that as he calls it the third heaven. And he says, it's necessary to boast, though it's not profitable, but I will go on to visions and revelations of the Lord, which that's what we're talking about. That word revelations is
right.
Apocalypsis.
It's somewhere in there. Apocalypse.
And I know a man.
Apocalypto.
I know a man in Christ who 14 years ago, whether in the body I do not know, or out of the body I do not know, God knows, such a man was caught up to the third heaven.
Harpazo.
And I know such a man caught up, seized, snatched. And I know how such a man, whether in the body or apart from the body, I do not know, God knows, was caught up into paradise and heard inexpressible words which a man is not permitted to speak.
Yeah, heaven there is Uranus, Orion. We get that too. It's not talking about that specifically. But I remember, this is years ago when I was doing college and career group. I remember teaching on that one time about Paul being caught up to the third heaven. And I remember afterwards a fellow came up to me and said, "Wow, man, I didn't know there was 3 heavens."
Mm-hmm.
He meant like 3 paradises.
Yeah, which one
Like
are you going
there's
to go
3
to?
heavens.
A, B, or C?
You got one,
Right.
and you got 2 of them.
There's
3 heavens.
I could totally understand someone seeing it that way.
Yeah, but it's actually logistics. It's a logistical term.
Yeah.
First, and it must be also there's a sensation of going up. Literally, they're passing up. They're up. They always feel like they go up. They go up out of their body. They're looking down, and then they continue up.
You think that? You think it's literally up? Because I was
it's
thinking,
even there, up, caught up. It's even part of the
Different
definition
planes
of
of
it.
existence.
yeah,
or-
because
I'm saying the sensation of it.
Yeah, right.
What
No,
if-
it is. You're
Almost
absolutely
everyone
right.
I ever
It is
hear.
up. I
there's
only
a
say that because
sensation of it's other dimensional. It could be no up. Like you just go into another place.
exactly.
Yeah.
Because
I understand
I'm-
what you're
You're
saying.
snatched to the.
I was thinking about how he says that. Was I in the body or not the body?
Yeah.
And the idea of the near death experience, what happens to people with
their
that
out of body experience.
is oftentimes there's a theory. I don't know how on the money this is, but that when you go into that state, the near death state, that things are released in your body like a dream state into your system, and we just see it as a dream state thing.
Yeah.
But what if that's the up? That's the gateway.
You mean like
It's not necessarily you left your body in this space.
you're being sucked out,
You're going
You're conscious?
the other way.
like Matrix when he's
Kind-
unplugged. and
yes,
he comes in.
exactly. you are in your body because you're
Yeah.
somewhere else. You're not. It's not in this plane.
Well, that's a great revelation in and of itself. Revelation now, man is a spirit and a body. I think it's the classic Earthnaut. The astronaut is a human being in a spacesuit. It's very clear that a human being is a spirit in an Earth suit, but it's just living. It's biological.
Sure, and I love too that Paul's like he even says twice. I don't know if it was me, or
That shows
not
you
me,
just
or
that shows you just how real
only God knows.
real it is. I know Jason sent me something. Talk about this fellow, Jay. Did you watch it too? On what's his name? Mark Mickey Robinson, and I've heard some of his testimony. He was in the plane crash there, and
it was another.
and he died later on.
Yeah,
because of the complications.
the complications and injuries, which is interesting. I'd like to get into that as well with the when this happened to Paul.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting. Was it a near-death experience?
It could have been. There has been Bible scholars that believe. First of all, they believe because it sounds funny. He's talking in the third person. He's about himself, and that was the way they actually did do that. There was a certain style where you were being humble about things. You'd put it in the third person. Your experience, like you knew somebody who experienced.
Well, anyways,
it was. But anyway, yeah, he was at Lystra where he was stoned. They believe it could have been, and had an experience of going up.
And there's sometimes
or caught up, harpazo.
And I do it to some extent. I don't know when and where not to do this, where you try to literally explain the Bible. Like,
Right.
oh, he got hit in the head, and he had some kind of experience.
Oh yeah, like it wasn't
you know what I
real.
mean?
Yeah, just
it
a dream
was,
state.
It was real. It was just a dream state, which is, I'm kind of
Which
saying.
sounds like to me he meant he was trying to say this was not a dream state.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
to me what he was saying.
Sure.
Like I was in my body or not, I'm telling you it was real. I went someplace.
But that's the reason people always
And
question
it was so
it.
real, I don't even know if I was out of my body or not.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, he was feeling.
Yeah. Well, that guy had a similar thing. It was after his plane crash. He was really tore up in the hospital for a long time.
His name was Mickey Robinson.
And
happened in 1968.
he almost died or did die.
He was a
And had
junkie.
a total.
He said he got into
He was
the
a
extreme
skydiver.
sports skydiver. And they were headed up, and there was
He
a
was
crash.
also he was raised in church as a kid, but not really into
But
it
he
at all.
cried out to God on the deathbed.
Yep. He said he went into.
Talk about the mercy of God. It's kind of like the thief on the cross type deal.
Yeah, but they always get weird because I don't know how this works. He went into outer darkness, he says.
I've heard those before.
All he said was, "I'm sorry, please help me." That was his thing. It wasn't even Jesus necessarily.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
He
it
was raised
just
in
his-
church, though.
I
There
cried
was-
it-
there
I
was
cried
an
out.
influence there. He talks about he knew enough to at least cry out.
Yeah.
And that was his heart, though, too.
But then he went through some other, whatever these other third heavens. He went through
He
some
saw
other
the wind. He
things.
saw the light there, and he said it was. He called it what do you call that? Gateway.
I called it a
Portal. He used the word
Portal.
portal.
That's a
Classic.
good word.
Love it.
Portal.
That's a good
I was trying to
word.
find that. That was what he called it.
Me
Yeah.
likey.
Yeah, here he was.
Sense his presence to the left, and there was this substance that was going through me between my waist and where my knees would be. It was like little golden speckles vibrating.
He was talking about being in the river of life. And
Yeah. Yeah.
We won't play all of it
And
because
so-
we maybe can't do that. But here,
So he had a crazy experience. It completely changed his life.
I don't know if people out there
I don't
realize how many now near-death experience witnesses, testimonies are out there.
Mm-hmm.
They're in the hundreds of thousands now. What do you do with that?
Yeah.
Sure. They've
What in the
experienced
world do you do with that? And it's in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying all is real. I know one fellow, Brian Melvin, is one. I highly recommend you read his book. He had a hell experience and then a heaven experience. I believe him for whatever the reasons. And I don't think we believe in heaven and hell because of that. But he talks about how he saw a side of it where people have near-death experience and there's demonic things that will fake you out.
Right. Right.
They will fake you out like, hey, everything's good.
Yeah.
Everything's great. Look at here. And then you don't need, and like I listened to one a while back, Reggie and I were watching. She's like, turn that off.
Well,
Because this lady was nuts. She was saying she went out of her body, and I believed her, but she came back and said, there's no judgment.
yeah.
I kept saying, where's the judge?
That's what I'm
and
saying.
she started mocking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it was just these peaceful beings that were nice.
But that's what you see with some of the
But Brian Melvin, let me finish. Brian Melvin said, Reggie told me to stop cutting people off. She's been listening to our podcast. I apologize,
Reggie.
guys, for cutting people off.
No idea what she's talking about.
Yeah. She's like, let people talk, Jeff. And she doesn't sound like that. Reggie, if you're listening
My God.
to that,
you're in double trouble.
I'm a double trouble. Anyway, these beings will deceive because there's like this window because they want to, if they're going to go back, if there's ones that they feel like aren't fully there, and that you can go back with the wrong message.
Yeah.
But I still believe they're real.
Yeah.
A lot of them are true.
There's probably multiple versions of experiences a person can have. Because if you look at it sounds very similar to it's very popular right now with ayahuasca and DMT and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, that's
And
what I
Rogan
mean.
talks about that all the time. How lots of people do. You go into a whole other. They're literally trying to
Howard
study
Stern, the lady that's up with Howard Stern,
spiritual?
did it. What's her name?
You go into another place and talk to entities or whatever, and it sounds similar. And I think
Yes.
it's interesting that we're talking about third heaven.
Other
There's literally
dimensional.
different spaces. Maybe this is some kind of Wild West other
And
dimension.
we're trying
where-
to figure out how to describe it
Yeah.
and what that is. And I think Paul too, whether it's, literally he was in the third heaven and he was in the top 3 of 3 and that's is what it is, or if it was just the language, but it's all throughout the scripture.
Yeah.
So I got a couple awesome examples here. Nehemiah 9:6 says, "You alone are Yahweh. You have made the heavens, the heaven of heavens, with all their host." Psalm 148:4 says, "Praise him, heavens of heavens, and the waters that are above the heavens. So all throughout Scripture, there's this idea of a threefold division: an atmospheric heaven, like this stellar heaven, and
that's
then
our atmosphere,
and then the spiritual paradisal heaven,
the third one.
And so that's like the kind of the
tiered has been out there for a long time. The ancients
7 levels
believed in the
seven. Yeah,
even Catholicism still believes
even
it.
if you follow midrash and like just rabbinic thought, it turns into 7 heavens, and
there's this deal
just,
about
progresses
tiered.
more and more.
it makes sense to me.
Even with the
who knows,
the ziggurats were based on it. You get up to the top deal on the ziggurat, and you're up where the gods are. Here, that's the same with mountains.
And there's
all the Greeks had them up on Mount
That's right.
Olympus.
absolutely.
Yeah.
You got to go up. There's this deal about the gods are up, and we're us mortals are down here. But if we can get up,
And that wild story in Daniel where it's like, sorry, I was delayed a couple weeks, but in between there and here,
21 days,
I got into
the Prince of Greece.
I got into a battle.
Yeah, what's that space?
Yeah, where was that?
Well, get this. I was thinking about this because we're technologically doing this as well. We have created multi-dimensions. We've already done it with the internet.
There's a whole world in a computer
You
game.
literally have a space. It's not here.
The cloud?
It's not the cloud. It's literally another dimension. You go into that. It's a world.
And it's
a
real
world
and it's
by
not
will.
real.
Exactly.
It's smoke and mirrors. Often we'll sit down to watch a movie at home in our iTunes, Apple TV catalog. Like, oh, we own 387 movies. Not really. We don't have those physically.
Not in your possession.
Yeah.
Like Apple shuts down, those are gone. Like,
Yeah,
is that real?
It is interesting because it has real world repercussions at the same time.
Yes.
No doubt about it. When you interface with it in a certain way, it's absolutely real. And it's also totally not.
Totally not. It's
Totally
not there. Like,
really.
they shut down, those movies are gone.
And as technology goes further, you will be more and more able to immerse yourself in another dimension. It's already here. It's already
I
happening.
liked how Mickey Robinson, when he said his spirit came back into his body, and he said it like, then he realized, I started hearing through these ears. See, we think our ears are hearing. They're not. You're hearing
They're like a
through them.
conduit.
Your eyes aren't seeing no more than the camera sees.
Yeah, they're windows, right?
You're literally you're seeing through them.
Yeah.
So you're really in it. It's amazing. Talk about technology.
Mm-hmm.
The body is just amazing.
Well, and
How you're in it instantly. You can think and it moves. And
technology-wise too, like when we look at that word, the Greek word harpazo, and the catching up and the snatching in the season.
yeah, it's not floating
like,
up
I mean,
magically.
my brain just instinctively goes to Star Trek,
That's what I'm saying.
just like disintegrating in one spot and then up in another spot,
yeah,
like that kind of.
it's already there. The dimension's already there. First of all, the power's already there. The knowledge is already there. And we're kind of catching up to it. You know, they've already worked on it. They're working on it now. How to make things go from here to there. Through lasers, through light, to transfer something.
Wonka vision.
Also,
And they can do, and it's with quantum, don't get started with quantum mechanics and all that physics.
in that same interview,
You can be two places at the same time deal.
the skydiver. Well, this has to do with that. The skydiver who had that near-death experience talked about when he went into this other dimension, there was some certain things like knowing.
Yeah.
You just knew stuff.
It's a different, he says, a higher level.
You knew things already intuitively. The way you communicated was
Yeah.
different. And he also said he knew it was outside of time and space.
He said a lot
Like,
about
it
that.
was weird.
I
There's
love that
which
too.
which is interesting. Like,
He says he kept
how
saying,
does that work?
he kept saying eternity is
Yeah.
real. Eternity
There's
is
some
real.
other thing outside
If
of
I
time.
if I could get anything across to you, he kept saying eternity is real.
Yeah.
It's like, what does that
Wow.
mean?
And the guy asked him, he said, well, how does that affect you now? And he says, I have to really try hard to be present in the moment.
I hear
Like,
that a lot.
I have a job
and,
to do.
And he used that more real deal.
I love
I've
he
heard
said
that
that,
before.
that learning
Heaven's
thing.
more real.
Jason, that reminds me of The Matrix, where he's just like, I just learned kung fu.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Just
Yes,
like
that's
that.
a good thought. That's
Well, because
really
a lot
what he
of this
was
stuff
talking
he's
about.
talking about, he intuitively knew, I'm in this place. I'm here
and it's
now.
not.
Like nobody told him that. He
Yeah.
knew it was just dark. Like he knew I was here. He knew you just knew certain things. It's weird.
Yeah, I remember one guy's near death experience. He knew his was a hell one, but he knew that something was a mile long. The dimensions of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, how would you just knew it?
Yeah.
This was like he said, 26 miles away, and it was 1 mile this, and you just understood coordinates. And
Yeah, that's really interesting because I think about that sometimes with like where creativity comes from, where skill comes from, like how much grace that is, because it's like it's already there. It already existed.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
see that with child prodigies. Like they come out
they
of the
just
gate,
can do
like
it.
2-year-olds
That
can
is
just
very
play
much, they can do kung
Mozart.
fu.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They come
it's
out
exactly
being able,
like
hey,
nobody taught them
downloaded.
that.
I just
They've
learned
got
Mozart.
kung fu down.
They just
Now
know it.
they've got piano
doesn't even
skill
make
down,
sense.
and they're not even thinking it.
Yes, it's just
Not
there.
thinking it at
It's
all.
already
It's
the
been
download
received.
was there.
So it
yeah.
has to come. I think what we're talking about today, it's really we're focusing in on the reality of the paranormal, or the reality in these last days, how these communities are being built up along these lines. People are just talking it, man. Angels, aliens, UFOs, demons. What's going on? And you can just feel it.
Well,
Even
what
down
was-
to the Bigfoot and the Sasquatches, all of that. But we're saying it is real.
What was Paul's? What was
A lot of the stuff. Sometimes it's just a matter
The
of
purpose.
terminology. He said he also heard things that he can't repeat.
Inexpressible. Yeah.
It's either
like
he
it's-
couldn't put words to it,
or he wasn't allowed.
or he
like-
wasn't allowed
like
to.
John,
They kind of
like,
go
there's
both
a part in
ways.
Revelation
so? Wait,
too.
why is he telling him?
He was
even about
he
this?
was
Well,
boasting
here's-
about his
is
ministry.
Is he just trying to say it's real, or that I'm
He was trying
super
to tell
spiritual?
them.
Here's the thing. It's
He is saying super spiritual
Okay.
it's super It's very complicated
with
because
the church because
the church
yeah.
in Corinth was all about boasting.
Yeah.
They were all about I'm of Apollos,
They
I'm
had-
of Peter, I'm of Jesus,
but they
I'm
had
of
these
Paul.
apostles come in.
And they were all about their spiritual experiences and their gifts and who was the greater and the most spiritual.
Yeah.
And they were saying, Paul, look at you, dude.
Some people came
You're
in.
like this ratty
And
mess.
he's saying I've been to Mars.
You're like this
basically.
ratty mess, and he's saying, "Look, I'm not going to boast. I'll only boast my weaknesses. But I got one thing I'm going to tell you.
Those
I
other
know this one
apostles.
guy. You want to talk about spiritual? He's been in the third heaven, sucker.
Yeah.
Like that
yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
thing. Like
because he had some. They got invaded. There was these fellas, man, that followed Paul around because they didn't like his stuff, and they would come into these churches and say, "This guy's not right. We know what we're talking about. Follow us." And then they'd go after the money part too. You can tell that's going on in Corinthians.
Sure,
He said,
'cause
"I
they're
didn't
taking it.
even do that to you."
yeah, they're showing.
But
up.
one translation calls them. He said, "I'm not going to boast like those super apostles.
That's the actual Greek. The
Yeah.
Greek is the word like hyper apostles.
I love that
super
version.
apostles.
I'm not
The
going
super
to like
apostle.
those."
That's a
other
literal
super
translation. The
apostles.
super apostles.
Yeah, but then he said, "But I've had some super stuff myself.
But what's great
That's
is
happened to me."
like 2 verses later, he calls them. It's the
He's saying, "I'm
false
qualified."
apostles.
Yeah,
pseudo apostolos.
That's an interesting flex.
and he says, "I've had." He was saying, but he does flex. He says, "I'm a Hebrew.
no.
I was trained up under Gamaliel." I mean, the whole thing. He was telling them because they were saying he's not a real Hebrew like us, and we're really connected.
and I'm a psychonaut.
So that's where he
I've
ended
been
up
to-
saying,
Totally. He's saying, "Hey, you guys want spiritual? I got your.
I've been
I
there.
got you. I got you.
I've
Yeah.
been there.
He was experienced.
I've seen
I've
Yahweh.
experienced this, and
I've
that-
seen Yahweh's home.
and what's amazing,
I've been to Yahweh's place.
Paul's heart and his cruciform, cross-shaped existence. Right out of that, he goes right back into the weakness thing.
That's really interesting.
Jesus told me, "My grace is sufficient for you."
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's incredible. He talks about the messenger of Satan.
So
that
the message
beat
was
him.
that's weird because it's actually a humble message.
Humble
what was that?
brag.
What's that hashtag humble brag?
That
It
was
was a
the
humble
big
brag.
message he's trying to bring.
No, he's saying
This is really the
He's
way.
trying to get across
Yeah.
to them. I'm qualified.
And it's like a little aside, exactly. Like, you guys, come on. You don't know what you're talking about. You want
Yeah.
spiritual. I've experienced things that are beyond your
He's
wildest
really saying those
imaginations.
guys aren't what that you think.
Mm.
They're not. And he was almost being nice to them. in some ways, trying not to come right out and
he's been
say
so gracious.
he's being gracious to these
Huge
guys.
heart and his love for them.
The
Just-
apostles too. I mean, those false guys. He even was kind of being gracious to them in a way.
He is, because remember
Yeah.
when he's like, well, at least the gospel's being preached, even if they're scam artists.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. Another letter. he
That's
says,
pretty
yeah.
gracious.
But we're harpazo. That's where we started, and the
Yeah,
third
to
heaven part
seize.
is just fantastic.
To me, that whole catching
That
up
comes
to
back to end games. I like it.
Yeah, it's just
What do you do with it? You little taste of it.
well, and
That's what he
and
was saying
so-
with Mickey
I
Robinson.
remember- what's this guy's
Yeah.
name? I want to
How
get
do you live now?
Because remember his wife just a little bit
I
ago
wanna
got
give him
the cancer
props.
deal,
Mm-hmm.
Ralph Martin. That's the Ralph Martin.
and
in
he
the-
had to focus on her staying and stuff. Anyway,
So Ralph Martin, he wrote in the World Biblical Commentary, his commentary on 2 Corinthians. Because you just said that about this, his own thought about that is he thought that experience must have just driven Paul, and just been something he could always go back to in the hard
Yeah.
times. Just this driving force, like
Yeah.
in the hardships and the beatings and the stonings and the shipwrecks and all that stuff, and in the weaknesses and the trials, like. But don't forget, oh my gosh, you saw the third heaven.
Yeah.
Like, you,
But I
you
wonder-
know that hope.
Yeah, I wonder
but he
if-
was also
You
he
know
was,
that wonder.
he was driven by the first vision too, the heavenly vision he called it, on the road to
The road to
Damascus.
Damascus.
But
You
I
got
could
the-
almost guarantee you there's part that you have to hold that still by faith, because
enough
with-
time goes by.
enough
Like,
time goes by. Was I crazy? Like we were talking, did I get just bonked on the head and
Mhm.
had a dream?
Yeah,
yeah.
Did I have some weird thing happen? And
some do.
you
I
get
mean,
away from
yeah.
it. Any spiritual experience I've had, when I get away from it, there is a level of like, wait, was that real? Because
That
it
can
goes
happen
away. You
just
know?
in general.
Yeah, yeah.
You can have charismatic experiences, but if you can also have very carnal experiences that will take away from the other. There
Yeah.
really is a in shape or out of shape
Yeah.
sensitivity.
But I think he did hold on to that.
No, I think so
He-
too. I really do.
I think he held on with all of it. I
Like,
mean,
changed
he
the
got
tra-
smacked in the road to Damascus.
Yeah.
yeah, because Jesus says to him,
Talk about
my grace is sufficient for you, for power is perfected in weakness. Therefore, I am well content with weaknesses, insults, distresses, persecutions, hardships, for the sake of Christ.
yeah.
When
he-
I'm weak, I am strong. Like, I think it was total driving
that's
force and
what
factor in his
that
life.
Mickey Robinson said too. How it affected him. His biggest thing in this life is to hear "Well done,
Yeah.
good and faithful servant."
Rewards. He talked about rewards.
Yeah, he really got into that, and he says it's not about saved.
like works.
Yeah, it's not. It's not that. It's something different. It's just doing your job.
Yeah.
That becomes the priority
Mm.
of it.
Yeah. Well, I was sharing with Jason this prayer in Philippians 1. It says, I pray your love may abound more and more in full knowledge and all discernment, so you may approve things that are excellent, in order to be sincere and without fault until the day of Christ.
Yeah.
Like, that's hardcore language, without fault. That's
Mhm.
that well done,
Mhm.
well done, faithful servant. That goal, that
Yeah. And
the
it's not
desire.
that. And it was not that it was a perfect sailing.
no,
You know what I mean? When he talks about but there is a perfect heart. There really is. There really is. Man, I'm getting back up, sir. I'm sorry.
And there's a perfect
getting
God who
back.
just has this long history of using very
Look how long
unworthy
he
people.
waited to work with Moses, to prepare Moses and work with Moses. 80. Okay,
80.
I can work with you now.
I got 30 more years.
80
being a
years
rascal.
old. And he was still rascally to start off, remember?
Abraham's
Then he
same.
bowed down, man. He totally
No, it's
submitted.
beautiful. Oh, and it's what we're talking about Paul and his experience. Same with him. One of my favorite mottos for me in my life is what he wrote to Timothy, that Christ came into the world to save sinners, of whom I'm the worst of
Yeah.
them. But
Yeah.
he showed me mercy.
And then he would talk,
his
but at the
all
same
his
time,
patience.
he would say, forgetting those things which are behind.
Yeah.
Moving on, man. Because it had to be part of the experience he had.
Yeah, and if you think about that, the experience he had,
The weight of glory is better than
all
us.
of the apostles had those types of experiences, and they believed it. I think I don't know what would have happened without them, but they obviously held on to it because they held on to it to their death.
Yeah.
It wasn't to their
Sometimes
advantage.
brutal.
It was like, this is how I can do this.
Yeah.
I'm going into certain death because
For
I
our-
know this other
For
thing.
our light affliction. This is what he calls
Yeah.
the troubles that he went through.
Yeah.
He called it light affliction.
Actually, most likely died
It's just for a moment.
at one point.
Worketh for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. He could talk that if he really was part of that experience, and we believe he was. I knew a man, whether in the body or out of the body.
I don't know. God knows.
And I like too how Mickey Robinson in his testimony, he said, I felt like there was zero consciousness of wrong in my life. Did you hear that part?
Yeah. Yeah.
No regrets of, I did
In
this
that
and
space.
in that space.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just totally forgiven, clean, whole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because what's interesting too, you're talking about Moses, is you would think an experience like that would change everybody. These supernatural, experience of the fourth kind, except what the Bible says is no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Talking about Moses with Mount Sinai, it's one of the most incredible displays of otherworldly figure, the gods
Theophany.
showing up.
They
Yeah.
even saw it
And
and heard
2
it.
seconds later, they're right back to the same stuff.
Oh, the heart.
So the faith part, it's like you want it so bad. Part of me wants it, but it's like, is it really going to change? You know, if you're like, God, just say one word, just say one thing.
If
It's
If
really
he did,
important.
would it
Yeah.
change anything? Not necessarily. Human nature, if the Bible is true, says not necessarily.
Right.
It ain't the thing. The
That's
experience
part of
in
it.
and
He
of
that comes to
itself.
God must believe that he is, and that he is a reward.
So what is the
of those
thing?
that
The heart?
diligently seek him?
The heart and faith. I mean, Jesus
Yeah.
talks about it extensively to the apostles. Like, most people aren't going to get this.
Yeah.
The people who are really blessed don't get to see anything.
Yeah.
And they still believe.
Like
They
he
don't
said to
get
Thomas. Remember
anything.
how it's funny how, like we were talking tough love in the book of Revelation. What would Jesus say to the church? Tough love is in there a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And when he left after being raised from the dead, one of the last things he did was get mad at him for not believing that those who came and said he's alive. He says he rebuked them. Why didn't you believe?
Yeah.
He wanted them to believe without seeing.
Yeah.
Something about that, man. It
Well, and
really something about that. He even said to Thomas, "Okay, you believe now,
Well,
but
right,
blessed are those who have
Whole deal
not
with
seen."
Abraham.
Yeah,
right.
Look at, he's the father of what? Faith.
The last thing
he believed
Before.
before it happened.
the last
Sure
thing
did.
the last thing Jesus said before he ascended was more or less a correction, because they weren't getting it.
Yeah.
All right, is it now the time?
Is now.
Is now the time we're gonna go kick butt, guys?
Yeah.
Guys.
Yeah. Another good one is it's one of my favorite interactions. It's so human and so supernatural is when they come and he's talking about how Abraham's going to have a child and Sarah laughs and tries to act like she didn't.
You
She
did.
sure does.
It's like, nah, you did laugh.
did.
But you did laugh.
Yeah,
But you did.
And they
did.
he didn't like it. Like,
Uh-uh.
nah, you didn't really believe me. I'm not kidding. Like, they took offense to
Yeah.
her laughing. Like, it's really interesting.
No, yeah, it's like shut up. No, you laughed.
No, you did.
Yeah.
So good.
It's like, is it Zacharias, John's dad? What was his name? Right, Zachariah.
Oh yeah, that's such a good one too.
When
He has to go mute because he doesn't have faith.
He's like,
That's a whole other deal.
Like, you
what
can't-
your words do to faith in the world. Like they
Yeah,
literally had
like
to shut him up.
They shut
like
him up,
you're gonna
like
ruin
he
it.
could affect. That goes back. I don't want to get off track here because we're just talking about the reality, the supernatural, and it's in the scriptures and what's going on in the last days. We really do believe out there that there really is a heaven. Absolutely a part of it. That's a big part of the end game and where we're headed.
And he had one.
And we're believing it. I like what Jason's talking about here, because we can talk all these experiences, and the party starts saying, "Oh, I want that too," but it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's really okay not to.
And in verse,
you're just fine.
Yeah, and in verse 4,
to be believing anyway.
Verse 4 of 2 Corinthians 12, Paul says that third heavens was paradise.
He does. He just explains it. He does call it paradise.
He calls it paradise.
Paradiso.
And we have it on good authority because Jesus said the same thing to the thief on the cross.
Yeah, it's an estate.
Today,
it's a real place. It's an estate.
You'll be with you. Where?
Yeah.
Paradise.
Because there really is a dark side to this. There is a good natural hunger for the supernatural and wanting that experience. And there's a side that gets taken advantage where you want it so much that you will try to cheat to manufacture it, whether it's through drugs or something else.
Oh my gosh!
Lots of people are doing that where they want that experience, so they are forced. They are doing it the wrong way, and they get deceived, like you're talking about.
Yeah, that's what Mickey Robinson was saying. He really found he was worshiping falling out of a plane. That experience, the drug. He said it became like a drug. He got obsessed with that 30 to 60 second fall.
Yeah.
That he kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it. And he says he realized what he really was doing, part of it was he was searching for the glory part, the supernatural.
He's wanting to go to the other side before he's there.
He said, I felt like I was flying. And
yeah.
And it goes back to the wonder years I was talking about. I still love, we were just out doing it, hiking a bit, and every once in a while you'll catch something. It's like, wow, there's something behind
this. There's a healthy side to it.
An artist. And you got to watch.
And there's a bad way to go about it. But the healthy side, to me, it's non-negotiable. I have to. You need that.
Yeah.
You have.
I love it. Makes you think.
That's why these communities are growing.
Yeah. One of the many amazing quotes from C.S. Lewis. We've been sharing a few on the podcast so far. There are two equal and opposite errors into which our race can fall about the devils. One is to disbelieve in their existence. The other is to believe and to feel an excessive and unhealthy interest in them.
Yeah.
They themselves are equally pleased by both errors and hail a materialist or a magician with the same delight. Love that line.
Yeah, that's dead on. Yeah.
It's dead on.
True.
So that's where we always come back to, Jesus at the center of all this stuff. But
well, we talk about that too, like there's always a counterfeit version of the good thing.
The parody, the twisted, perverted thing.
Always, any good thing you could possibly think of, there is a mere dark version of it.
There is.
The same thing. It's wild.
And I think a lot of it, part of it, the deception side, I mean, it's just as clear in the scriptures we're talking about the heavens, the atmospheric heaven, that there's some dark stuff there. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers, rulers of the darkness of this world, wicked spirits in heavenly places.
Yes.
Not heaven
One
places.
translation I love says cosmic forces of darkness.
Right.
That's another region. Where are those guys?
I think it's really it is atmospheric up because that's what it's
number two.
So you think
that's what it seemed like
with
with Daniel. Somehow or another, I don't know. I don't know if it's a cloaked deal, or it's it's real close, other dimensional. They're being held back, and if something were to release, it could be seen immediately, brought into this dimension. I don't know, but it's there.
Yeah,
I know it's there. I know there's a Star Trek. I forget which one where they're in the mountains, they're watching over this this planet of people.
Yeah.
And they're just observing.
Yeah.
Remember that one? And they can't interfere.
Yep.
Because
it's so good.
And then
it's
it's like they're watchers. Talk about watchers. And something happens, and their cloaking thing goes off, and people are like, what is it?
They make them gods.
It's a god. Instantly.
Exactly.
Has to be.
Who's been watching us?
The gods.
And then they have to keep them from getting the knowledge of atomic power. Anyway, but that could be part of it. It's because it's very much watchers. It's very much interference. And I believe it's real. even in the temptations and the people, quote, the voices in my head and things like that. That's somewhere dimensional, but it's still being picked up on
Yeah.
in the head somehow. I don't think, and I think that's a powerful thing to know, that not every thought that comes to your head is of you. Kick that thing out.
Yeah.
Resist that stuff. And that's part of this other dimensional talk that we're looking at. In this angels, is it angels, aliens, UFOs, demons? What's happening? And before we go, let's kind of wrap this up. We were talking about the third heaven, but what I think the interference part, the darkness part, we have to watch out for is I think there's stuff trying to prepare man for the wrong stuff.
Showing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's what Jesus talked about. It. You've rejected me, but you're going to accept somebody else who comes claiming he's the one.
Yeah. The mirror image.
There's some super stuff coming, according to the scriptures.
Yeah.
There's some stuff coming, and I think part of that's going to be directed toward the good stuff. Like they're going to twist it.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Or Jason.
When Christ makes contact, they'll have it switched to where it's the evil dude coming.
Yeah.
It's not. Because I'm going to read this. For this we say to you by the word of the Lord in Thessalonians, that we who are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord will by no means precede those who are asleep. For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout. That's heaven again. That's not just the third heaven. That's like our closer here. With the voice of an archangel, with the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up. Harpazo, it's there again.
He was caught up, though. Wait a second.
Yeah.
Because they were standing around looking up.
Yeah.
Physically up.
Yeah.
They said, the angels at another.
And what did they say?
Hey, what are you guys looking up for? What are you doing?
But finish it. What did they say would happen?
Come back the same way.
The same way.
Yeah. Up. Physically up.
And that's where I believe, man, just to know the Lord and to know the truth, to have a clarity and a peace of heart, because there's some stuff going to be happening, man. And just to know what's going down, to be on the right side. So, man, I appreciate it, Tyler and Jason and guys. We're going to see you again next week. We're going to keep rolling, man. Revelation Now podcast. We're just getting started. Appreciate you listening.
Peace.